Welcome to Nameless Debate Radio, where radioactivity is contagious. You can join us in broadening our minds on the Nameless Debates Discord via the link below and even feature here yourself, if you've got what it takes.
Hello,
Alright.
people. This is the losers final of the Nameless Debates tournament. We are going to be discussing should personalized sex work be banned. Forks is on the affirmative, and Jack is on the negative. Um, Someone do a coin toss because that's how we're choosing who goes first now.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh, is that? I thought that was just for the final, given that there's like no clear affirmative. But I don't mind Forks if you want to go. I'm assuming you prepared to go first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm happy with Forks going first. I don't have issues with that at all.
All right.
So let me know when I'm ready to go.
You can start now.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Forks, and I'll be repping the affirmative of personalized sex work being banned. Now, I want to preface this by saying that sex work is a very complicated topic. You know, it is, of course, known as the world's oldest profession. And so conversations surrounding it likely constitute as one of the oldest discussion topics known to man. Let me be clear that my opponent, Jack, is an intelligent person, and I trust that he will be charitable in his interpretation of my position and arguments. Still, though, I find it necessary to dispel the negative assumptions that tend to be made about positions like mine. No, I don't condemn sex work from the perspective that the female participants in the profession are trying to worm their way into the minds and bodies of innocent young men. No, I do not believe that they are evil temptresses trying to get into the cracks and crevices of the male psyche in an attempt to destroy masculinity or some other alarmist nonsense like that. I, as should you, condemn all misogynistic rhetoric surrounding sex work, and in fact, I do not wish to argue for a blanket ban on sex work. Rather, I wish to make a strong argument against the exploitative nature of many relationships within sex work, more specifically, the types of sex work which entail a personal connection and interaction between client and customer, i.e., escorts, prostitutes, chat rooms, and virtual websites dedicated to these personal interactions. Now, in order to understand why somebody like me would want to ban these types of sex work, quote unquote, relationships, you have to look at the state of the modern young male, right? It's a common trend, especially in America, at least that's where I'm familiar, that young men feel more and more lonely. This is not very surprising, seeing as how there have been events like, for example, COVID or like the rise of social media, which have largely contributed to the downfall, so one could say, of more face-to-face physical interactions. There's a lot of growing social anxiety, a lot of growing depression, things of that nature. All of these are motivators for a lot of young men to hop onto OnlyFans, make their subscriptions, or to look for escorts or sex workers in those types of professions, and to seek some kind of alternative, quote unquote, relation or sexual experience. As you know, these kinds of sexual experiences, which were once pretty commonplace among young men, as a just a part of growing up, really. These are things that a lot of young men are finding more and more difficult to find. And I therefore think that these kind of personalized artificial relationships that are invoked within these forms of sex work are very exploitative and can be very damaging to the young male psyche. Now, I don't say that to place the blame on these sex workers, nor to say that they are evil. I think that they are simply benefiting from a large social problem. However, the fact is that benefiting from a large social problem in that manner is still very exploitative. I also want to make it very clear that I do not think that every single interaction of this nature is a toxic one. However, I do not think that that is necessary for me to call upon a ban for this type of sex work. For example, it could be the case that not every time somebody does something else that we would obviously consider a destructive behavior, such as the injection of heroin or meth, that doesn't always necessarily lead to a bad outcome, right? Maybe they could just do it once, maybe they could just enjoy the thrill, and there's no negative repercussions following from that. But that still wouldn't justify not banning those substances, because it is the case that plenty of people do suffer very harmful experiences from them. Similarly, there may be counter arguments presented towards me in the form of, well, these women are working a legitimate job and they are making money. They need this money, they need this work. So why should we deprive them of their ability to work in this way? Just because there are people that need money and need work does not mean that they are able to work in professions which engage in unethical exploitative behavior. For example, we do not make this same excuse when we look at drug dealers. Lots of drug dealers need the money, they live in poverty. That doesn't mean that the exploitative nature of their work is justified. So I think that covers a lot of the main bases. Surely we'll get into it as the discussion progresses, but those are my general thoughts and outlines of the topic, and I am interested to hear what Jack's response is. And that's it.
I'm ready to go in 3, 2, 1. Now, I'm glad that Forks has decided not to go down the classic misogynistic route, as he put it, in terms of attacking this position. I think to some degree, based on his opening, he did end up accidentally falling into that position by making the claim that the individuals participating in the sex work are the exploitative ones. Now, obviously, in the effort of being charitable, I'm assuming it was some sort of a misspeak or something we can go into further, but to some degree, we do need some clarity on that because it's rather important to the problem, quote unquote, that Forks is trying to solve here. Now, I think what's largely problematic with Forks' position is that it's to some degree a maintenance of the status quo and to some degree a return to older times. Largely speaking, the state of affairs that I imagine coming about with Forks' sort of bans are going to be a return to forms of sex work like pimping or escorting, frankly, right? Where the sex work nature of the work is obfuscated or hidden or dealt with through a third party such that the individuals are no longer engaged in direct personalized sex work where the transactions are between the parties involved. And unfortunately, this happens to be the most pernicious form of sex work when we're talking about the negative effects on the sex workers themselves, right? We're talking about pimping. We're talking about management services online. We're talking about studios that are incredibly exploitative with regards to their production and distribution of porn, right? So in that regard, I feel like Forks' position is a return to or a advocation for the current state of affairs or a return to previous state of affairs where sex workers were less safe as a result of having to basically no longer engage in their act legally, right? Secondly, with regards to I guess solving the problem of how this affects the parties involved in the other parties involved in the transaction, right? The people paying for the sex work, right? When we talk about addiction or the potential problems of someone consuming or engaging in these kinds of content or with individuals, right? It seems to be again that the most pernicious form of this, or the most problematic form of this, is the fact that it's freely available, right? Again, a non-transactional form of sex work, right? Porn addiction is really only widespread an issue if it's accessible in the first place, and to a large degree, putting a paywall in place makes porn or sex work less accessible, right? And therefore less pernicious. People can consume less of it and therefore potentially are less likely to become addicted to it. So that's something we can go down further in the conversation. Lastly, I think that the larger problem of this is, and again, I don't imagine this is super common, but there are some people who rely on sex workers in order to get any kind of emotional connection. And while I do agree with you that that's problematic if that's replacing things that they could have access to, right, a la the disconnectedness people felt during COVID, I think it's a bit alarmist to say, hey, okay, there's a bunch of lonely people out there because of 2 years of issues. This is a perpetual problem, and so we need to ban sex work for it. There are people who might have disabilities, might just be incredibly fucking ugly, right? Who just can't, unfortunately, have the human or emotional connection they need to with another person, and sex workers provide this to them, right? These are sort of the three, I think, main points that I'm sort of opening up with, and I'm happy to move on from there.
All right, we're going to move on to the open discussion. So we're going to let Forks respond to Jack's opening statement, and we will go off from there.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm gonna go point by point on these, and actually, you can feel free to like cut me off whenever you feel like I'm misrepresenting something that you said, or if you feel that way.
Well, yeah, actually, if we
first thing you
could start
said,
it, if it's possible, could we just get some clarity on the whole exploitation of the paying parties, I guess, situation? Because I understand, again, that it's not meant to be this like attack on the workers involved, but to some degree it does feel like that with regards to the language you used.
Well, you kind of made a kind of a specific claim that you felt that I kind of leaned into or fell into the trappings of misogyny with that remark. I want to say that that's entirely untrue. You could clarify what you mean by misogynistic, because I know that it could be a
Sorry,
little
not
bit
so
of
much misogyny as the whole women are worming their way into the minds of men type situation, right? Because when you make the
But do you
claim
think
that these women are exploiting a situation, like, and you draw the comparison to drug dealers, right? For instance,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you see obviously the negative baggage that comes with that, right? With regards to, I guess,
Yes, but I don't think it's especially misogynistic. The only reason that I said women specifically is because, of course, this is like a predominantly women-centered line of work. And it's not like I'm making some kind of criticism of the nature of women or womankind or the woman gender when I say that they're
sorry, yes,
exploiting
when I
this
say,
unfortunate
I
reality.
should be specific, yeah. When I was referring to what you called the quote unquote misogynistic junk, I'm not making the claim that what you said in the second part there was misogynistic in and of itself, right? Just referring to like the word you used to describe the chunk that you were talking about you didn't want to go down the train of like women are exploiting men and worming their way into the minds of men in order to like exploit them. But then it seems like, again, the way you phrase the second half is you've got a bunch of lonely men, now you have a bunch of sex workers who are seemingly
Guys,
exploiting these people.
so when I said the first bit about women like worming their like way into the minds of men, I
Mhm.
was saying that I'm not trying to make some kind of fundamental critique that like modern women are whores and they're just trying to like spread their degeneracy or whatever. Like I
Okay,
know that
okay, gotcha.
that just to clarify, I can understand the confusion, but no, that's what I
Yeah,
meant.
now
I
I'm
do think,
completely
yeah,
okay.
okay, sure. So now that we've kind of clarified on that, the other thing that I want to like mention is that um actually, I felt like the last point that you made at the end was the most interesting to me, that you said that there's a lot of men out there, and for them, the only way that they'll have access to any kind of semblance of relationship is through these kinds of sex work interactions. Um, but then you also kind of
Of a
seem to
sexual
say that,
relationship.
yeah, and you also kind of said, like, you seem to agree that there was some kind of sense of that's not okay. There's some kind of sense of that's a bad thing,
No,
right?
I don't think that's a bad thing. In the sense that it's
You don't think
unfortunate.
it's a bad thing?
It's unfortunate that those people can't get what they need, but it's also the reality of the situation, right? So I don't think it's a
Uh-huh.
bad thing that the sex workers are giving them that thing they need.
Yeah, but they're not really, when we say they're giving them that, we mean that they're giving them that in a very artificial sense, right? And the reason I compare this to drug dealers is because I think a very similar argument could be made. Like, let's say somebody is very, very unhappy, so they try to get some form of drug, maybe heroin, some meth, some kind of stimulant, to try to feel the happiness that they were missing. That's going to give them a very artificial sense of happiness, but at the end, it's probably just going to fuck with their mind and not really give them the meaning they're hoping for. Like, wouldn't you agree with that?
It depends, right? Like, again, if perhaps I misphrased, right? If what you're going if you're going to a sex worker looking for a relationship, that's problematic, right? The people I'm talking about
Of
are
course.
the people for whom like sex is totally off the table, right? Because and like when we I think physical or emotional contact, right? Like is to a large degree of the sexual nature is to a large degree inaccessible, right? I I don't think
Sure.
it's the same thing as a drug dealer, right? To me, it's more similar to like I get like an adrenaline rush from jumping out of planes, so I pay someone to, you know, fly me up and jump out of. Obviously, I never do this because I'm a pussy, but you know, um, but assuming I'm an adrenaline junkie and I like jumping out of planes, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm paying someone for that service, and no one else can give me that service. I can't fly a plane. I don't have the like ability to get a pilot's license, but I really like to jump out of planes, so I pay someone for that
No,
service.
I understand, but I still think the analogy that you're presenting is there's still like the veil of artificialness that I'm talking about is missing. So like I think that when these guys are like hitting up these like chat streamers, these like OnlyFans models, these escorts or prostitutes, when they're hitting them up for this very personal like interaction, we have to question, okay, why are they going for the personal interaction instead of the non-personal interaction? Why don't they just watch a porn video? And like it seems like the obvious answer to that
Well,
is, I mean, human beings are social
well,
creatures. We
you can
seek that
agree that
social
there's a
validation.
huge you can agree there's a huge difference between watching a porn video and like being touched by another person, right?
No, I agree. I agree. I agree. That's what I'm getting into. We have to ask ourselves that question. And like the obvious answer is like we're human creatures. We're very social. We crave like social
Yeah.
validation and
So
social
again,
yeah.
I'm not
So like,
disagreeing with you that there is like
yeah.
a current, seemingly especially post-COVID, right, problem with people
Mhm.
interacting, getting the touch they need, right? But it
Yeah.
seems a bit alarmist to me to be like, okay, because we have this like recent uptick that seems pretty explainable as a result of lockdowns, that we now need to like ban this thing, right? That was helping people before that had literally no other outlet, right? Like the people you're talking about, like
Um
the vast majority of people you're talking about, that thing
uh
will run its course. They'll be done. A few years after lockdown, you're going to see like potentially lowerings in these numbers. Even if people are engaging this kind of behavior, they're probably going to still have like normal sexual relationships, right? I think it's a common.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with all that. So hold on. When you say it's alarmist, right? I
Uh-huh.
don't know if I also don't know if I agree that this is like only an uptick because of COVID. Like in
So
my introduction, I did mention COVID, but I also mentioned that this was something that's kind of become inevitable given the
I've
fact that
heard I've
more and
heard
more
all the
people are
meme.
spending time on social media. Like
Yeah,
people
yeah,
will
I
spend
know.
12
But
hours a day on
here's
social
the
media.
issue:
Like, come on.
is we've
Yeah.
all heard the like classic red pill dialogue trees of like, oh, men are having less sex than ever, right? And so like
Of course.
I've looked up the studies, right? And from what I understand, prior to 2019, right? Like, or I should say prior to 2019, right? It literally was the case that the sorry, the average number of sexual experiences men had in a year was on the uptick. Not a super large uptick, not as big of
No,
an
of
uptick as
course, I
women,
agree.
but it
No,
wasn't
I
enough.
agree, and I don't fall in line to that red pill talking point that
Right,
less men are
but
having.
then here's my question,
I wouldn't
right?
make that claim,
If
but I
if
think that
if
wait, I think what you're talking about is explainable though. I think it's explainable by kind of the same problem that I'm talking about, but to in a different way. So I think a lot of that is because a lot of people are hooking up a lot more frequently. Like you would agree, there's a lot more hookup culture. There's a lot more friends with benefits, right?
yeah,
Would you say? Yeah, for sure. But like to me, I'm saying, and of course, it's not like there's like this big meta study on it. I can't like cite you like a scientific research paper on it, but it seems like a lot of guys are getting fucked up because they develop feelings for these people that they're friends with benefits with or hooking up with, and then it turns into like a really weird toxic scenario that's not really good for either party. And that's kind of similar to what I'm talking about.
so I think potentially, right? I
Mhm.
might agree with you if we're talking about teenagers, right? Who have a less explicit like boundaries and have less of an understanding of like, relationships and specifically sexual relationships, right? My assumption is if you're having regular casual sex by your like mid to late 20s, right? You're probably less of the sort of person who's like accidentally developing feelings in lieu of like some rare case or two, right? And
I would say
regardless
I
of
would
that,
generally
I
agree.
would probably agree that even if we had paid sex work, probably shouldn't be available to people before they can drink, whatever the drinking age is in your country, right? Um,
Uh,
that's because
so,
it's definitely more addictive than alcohol. So whatever your drinking age is in the country is probably where your porn age
what
is.
can you put like can you give me some kind of estimate on what age specifically you would put, like would you say under 25 no bueno, under 21 no bueno, what would you say?
It's going to be a decision based on what your like nation, state, or culture perceives as being adult, right? And this
But
is kind of why I
what do you personally think? Not like nation
like
state.
when should you be able to pay someone for sex work?
Yes.
Probably I would say like at minimum like 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
But for the many, 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 for the but like for the many, many, many young men who are under that age
That's the thing.
who have been
I don't think again
with sex.
the vast majority of young men, right, are not in. And again, when I say paid sex work, I'm specifically talking about prostitution in that case. If we're talking about just
Yeah.
like consuming porn online, I'm happy for 18-year-olds to do that. Right? That's if you're paying for porn online. I think it's stupid because there's free porn, but feel free to pay for porn online.
But are you happy with 18-year-olds to pay real tangible money to women to have these kind of intimate personal relationships because they feel lonely? Is that something you're okay with?
Yeah. And again, because
So
again,
hold on.
wait,
Really?
fundamentally, I'm okay with it in the sense that it is a minor problem. I do not believe this is a significant enough issue, right?
I disagree. I think it could be really mindful.
If
Like
the
please
idea is that the average number of real life sexual experiences people are having, right? When I say average number, I mean the number of people, not the number of experiences, has been increasing over time, right? With this exception of like a massive dip as a result of COVID, right? It seems
Mhm.
unlikely to me that now people are going to pay for what is effectively the same thing.
So I don't know. Like, hold on. I think that you're trying to limit this to like a more so of a real life conversation. What happens in real life? I don't know if I agree that that's the scope that we should be limited to. It seems like just no matter how you slice it in real life or online, this can be just really mindfucky to young men who are in this age range that can get addicted to this out of, purely trying to solve their own loneliness. And like as we know, right, online dating has been getting a lot more popular in recent years. It's not like these online interactions like don't affect these people's mental states. Like, wouldn't you agree
Yeah,
with
but
that?
the issue is that the ban you're placing, right, is not just on online sex work specifically, right?
Yes.
And nor is it even on like the issue is, right? Again, what I'm talking about when I mention this, the most pernicious quote unquote form, right, of like porn or access to sexual content, right? Um in the real world, right, as it stands, when we're worried about like it
Mhm.
being a problem for lonely young men, is the free kind, right? The kind that doesn't get banned, right,
Yes,
in
but
your
the
world.
difference is, and the reason why I didn't advocate as strongly to ban these types is because you're not directly taking money from somebody who's in a pretty poor mental state, who's creating a lot of the demand for these services. So it's the difference between if I know that somebody is a stoner, right? They really, really like weed, they depend on it. I think it's far less unethical to be like, hey, dude, I'm hitting up a blunt. Do you want to come join me? We can just
Okay,
smoke
no, no,
together.
no. Look,
That seems far more ethical than if I'm like, hey, hold on, hold on. That seems far more ethical than if I say, hey, I have a bag of weed. I'll sell you it for like $500 because I know you can't live without it. Like one seems way more fucked up than the other.
Okay, so I think we can both agree that like taking advantage of someone's addictions, right, is probably less ethical, right? And I said addiction specifically here
No,
because weed
definitely.
is kind of a different thing,
Yeah,
right? Um,
definitely less ethical.
yeah.
Yes.
But I think, right, the issue I'm having here, right, is that you're banning something, right,
Mhm.
which it would be like, I guess the conversation we're having or the debate we're having to some degree is like, I view sex work like alcohol or weed or tobacco,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Where it is theoretically harmful or it is theoretically significantly harmful for a small minority of people, right?
No, not a small minority.
For a
Wait,
small
hold on.
minority of
Not a
people,
small.
because no, because here's
Hold
the
on.
issue.
Not a. But when we say small minority, are you just what do you mean by that?
Because most people are not alcoholics. Most people are not addicted to weed. Most people are
For
not
sure.
addicted to tobacco.
Yeah.
Right? Even
Most
if
people are not addicted to heroin, but we still outlaw it because of the people
wait,
that are. They
hold
get
on, no, no,
fucked up.
wait. There's a big difference in that I think, right, the claim would be that if heroin was commercially accessible, far more people would be addicted to it.
But it hold on, but it is just in a different form,
No,
right?
it's not
There's
commercial.
a I'm not a chemical scientist or expert,
I'm not okay.
but I'm fairly certain. Like,
If the idea is
yeah,
for me to be charitable, right? Can we be at least charitable enough to when I say commercial, I'm not talking about the medical industry supplying people who need medicine, right? Like there is
no,
no
wait,
legal,
not
commercially
even that,
available form of heroin, right?
not even that. To my understanding, the opioid crisis in America is largely because people without prescriptions demand and are supplied with opioids, and that they're very similar to heroin.
Yeah. Again, the
Yeah.
point, why are opioids not just freely and commercially available on the market? Because they are incredibly addictive, and the expectation is that if everyone just had access to it, if you went down to your local store and were able to buy heroin or opioids, most people would probably end up addicted, right? But that doesn't seem to be the case when you go down and have a pint of beer on the weekends, right? Or you have like a smoke at night, right? This is what I'm saying, is like this seems to be the thing our discussion hinges on, right? Is like my belief is that that one, like, sex work or the content produced by sex work is not as like addictive to as large a number of people, or potentially addictive to as large a number of people as you seem to think it is, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but of the people that would be entertaining sex work of the brand that we're talking about, again, this is why I said earlier, we have to ask the question, why specifically are they entertaining this personal sex work as opposed to just watching a non-personal form like porn, where the actress doesn't even know who you are?
Okay, so here's a question for you,
The
right?
reason for that, proportionately, people will make a decision because they want that interaction, because they're lonely. So I'm saying, of the people, of the sample that are willing to get into this sort of thing, it seems like they would have that proclivity to get addicted and to get mind fucked because of how they're
So
entering
here's a
in the
question
first
for you,
place.
right? Let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I don't know, a quadriplegic, right?
For sure.
Can't even give yourself a hand job, right?
Yeah.
And you're also ugly. So, and you have a terrible personality, right?
Okay,
So,
stop doxing me. No, I got you.
uh, but so obviously, we there's a pretty clear reason why this person is preferring like sex work, right? Like, let's say prostitution physically, or a chat room over just like porn, right?
Of course.
Do you think this person, right, should now basically, because of the state of affairs wherein they can't get laid by not paying someone,
Mhm.
do you think that now they should basically never have the opportunity for sex?
I
Just
think
just
that
because a small proportion of the population, right, might theoretically become addicted, right? Are we just going to fuck over a bunch of other people?
Well, hold on. Again, you keep saying, and I want to address this before I answer your question, but I will answer your question, I promise. You keep saying a small portion of the population is
From my
likely to get
perspective.
addicted. That's, yeah, that's true. I agree. However, it's that small portion of the population that are likely to get into that kind of thing in the first. That's the reason why I said that's who we should be focusing on, because the people that are likely to get into these situations are doing it because they already feel lonely and feel deprived of connection. But as your question follows, I do think that the individual you just described right now is very likely high risk to be exploited, because it's clear to me that they feel as if they can't get this interaction organically, and so they're going for it inorganically in the hope to get some kind of artificial stimuli. Like, yeah, I think they shouldn't be going through that. What I would do for that person is I would try to tell them, if I were their friend, hey man, even if you can't, feel fulfilled in this aspect of life, I think that you shouldn't let your desire to have this fulfillment define you. You should
No, no.
let other
What if they're not
things
lonely? What if
become
they
valuable.
literally want sex and nothing else?
What if they literally want sex and nothing else? There's
Yeah.
literally no intimate attachment.
Well, attachment is different.
Yeah.
Obviously, sex is an intimate act, but attachment is a different thing. We're
No,
just
I
talking.
understand.
He's there
I
for
just
the
think,
sex, right? Sex is still an emotional
yeah,
act, but he's there for the sex.
yeah, of course. Of course, I think in that instance, if he's purely there for the sex and it's not like he's going to form attachment after the fact, then sure, that individual case is fine. However, I don't think that individual cases like that outweigh the negative
Okay.
harm that comes from what happens to other people who are exploited.
So, I, let's perhaps this is. I think we're about the same. I assume, right? Let's consider for a second most of the media, right, prior to like COVID, right, and prior to this like OnlyFans thing, regarding sex work, right? Specifically, like in like person to person sex work, right? So let's just forget about pornography for a second. It is a I mean, in all the media I've watched and all the stories I've heard and everything I've read, it seems incredibly unlikely, right, that people are. It happens occasionally, but becoming or having sex workers become mistresses that they, permanently keep on the side or have ongoing relationships with, right? Often, sex work, however horrific, ends up like normally being like sex tourism in places where people like, literally know they're doing something fucked up. That's why they're going to another country to do it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there is no plan to form any kind of attachment, right? I understand that there is, again, this small contingent, right, especially in sort of this modern post-COVID or during COVID age, of men who are particularly lonely, right, who are now trying to find some kind of like emotional, I guess, structure for the void, right? But I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that this has been the historically, like the vast majority of people who have engaged in purchasing sex work, right? Um, Nor do I think it's going to be the future. Nor do I think it's the current state. Right? For instance, right, when we talk about OnlyFans, right, we we have to stop talking about OnlyFans as this like thing where like um, people are going there and like most of the creators are engaging in this like girlfriend experience because that's not the case, right? Like,
Well, they're not. They're not. But hold on. I'm not saying that they are. I'm not saying it's even the intention of the girl to be like, hey, I'll be your girlfriend. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that through no fault of the girl at all, it is the case that of the market who are going to be pursuing these interactions, they're doing it because they want to fill this void. And so the girl having this personal interaction with them is probably going to make them feel something in the same way that there's all of these stories about these young men having friends with benefits or sleeping around having hookup culture, and they get attachments, they get feelings, even if the girl was never ever truly presenting herself as a potential romantic option for him. And so that's all I'm trying to say. Also,
right.
really quickly, can we get a time check? Because I know there was one other point you made about how
Mhm.
what I'm proposing might lead back into pimping era, and I want to get a time check to make sure we have enough time for that.
I think we have another like 10 minutes before closing, but the judges can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
You have 4 minutes.
Oh,
Oh shit. Let's get into. We should do that
okay.
really quickly
Yeah, yeah.
before we forget. So yeah, I heard what you said in opening statement about how what I'm saying is going to lead back into the pimping era. I disagree. I certainly think that malicious third parties are something that we truly need to like take into consideration and take account for. But I don't think that what I'm proposing, like banning these personal interactions, proves that that's going to see an uprise. Because again, it's not like I'm saying that we need to eradicate all privately hosted, porn websites or whatever. Like, I agree. If you're a porn creator or like some kind of sex worker and you want to host yourself or be on a platform that lets you host yourself and make your own content, that's cool. I'm just asking that there's like a cutting out of the personal angle where you have a relationship or connection with your client.
Right, but like that's what I'm saying is like you've forced a middleman, right? Because you're basically you're saying that like you basically can't have like a transactional relationship with your client, right? Like to some like you literally then require a middleman, some kind of website that isn't the party involved to take some kind of cut, right? This is what I'm saying is like eat oh
What just happened?
uh maybe his internet dropped out. Wait, let's take a pause. I think
So I forgot we started at 12:10. We actually, yeah, you were right the first time. We have about 10 minutes.
well, okay. All right, we'll just hold on the clock, I guess, and then we'll see. Do like football style extra time or something. I hope he's okay.
Uh, hold on for a second, the audience. There are some technical difficulties. We will be back shortly.
Hey, nice.
Want to keep the 10 minutes of discussion, or are we going to cut that?
Yo, my bad. Shit.
LG.
Give his conclusion yet?
No, we still have like technically 10 minutes of discussion. We can probably do that. I'll just I have to just like hard dip at like 1:15. Not helpful and also wrong time. I have to hard dip in like maybe like 25 minutes, so we'll just have to keep like audience questions short, I guess. But I can still do the full 10 minutes before closing.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, sorry, where do we leave off? It was like
Yeah, so
you
you were just
responding
about
to
to
like
you were
injection of the
asking
middleman.
about you asked about pimping. I'm not sure if you heard my response.
No, I'm sorry, you have to repeat it. I apologize.
Yeah, no, I'll do. Yeah, so basically the issue is, right, if you're preventing any kind of like I guess like personal transactions between the like sex worker and the consumer involved, right? You basically set up the requirement for a middleman, right? Like a person like the sex worker can't own the site that is then doing the transactions with the individuals involved, right? By that very nature, you kind of require effectively a pimp or a third party service.
No, I don't agree. I don't think I don't think my position is exclusive of them owning their own site or owning their own hosting. It's just that they can't use the site that they're hosting to have these like personal, like I don't know, personal chat rooms or like personalized streams or interactions. Like, I don't think they're exclusive.
With regards to, okay, so you're sorry, so just to be clear, you're not saying that it has anything to do with the transactions in place then.
No, I'm saying that the transactions in place can't be for the purpose of a personalized client to customer experience. But like you could host your own website and like have a $5 entry fee if you want.
Okay, that's fair. If we just take a
Yeah.
step back then, okay, because we do have a little more time, and just want to sort of, I guess, finish up the addiction thing, right? Because look, you are right, right? At the end of the day, addictions are probably going to most negatively affect the people who are most likely to engage in the activity that might cause the addiction in the first place, right?
Yeah.
Someone who is severely depressed maybe might be more likely to engage in consistent binge drinking, right? Which might result in alcoholism, or might be but
For
again,
sure.
just because something is potentially very serious for a small number of people, right? We don't ban it one for everyone, right? The other thing is in this case, right? The thing that you're theoretically banning, what's it called? Doesn't really have any like immediate, I guess, or inherent pernicious effects, right? It's not like heroin where someone could OD or there are serious like risks with regular use, right? You could theoretically regularly consume sexual content, right? And let's say develop like an addiction to porn, but that's not the same thing as, I guess, developing a relationship or this weird relationship mindset with regards to the person you're talking about, right? And again, with regards to
So
the addiction to porn thing, I think it's just less likely if
yeah.
it's less
Well,
free.
hold on. Like again, I feel like there's this point that I've been making that hasn't really been fairly addressed, and it's that I agree. If the scope that we're operating with is like the entire population, they're probably not likely to develop this addiction. But my
This is how
point
we
was
make
that
legal decisions.
the people, hold on, the point was that the people who are pursuing these interactions in the first place probably would have certain proclivities that would make them especially vulnerable to this addiction in the first place,
I'm not,
such as
I'm not disagreeing with
feeling
that.
lonely or
But
feeling incomplete. Yeah, but if you don't disagree with that,
the
then
claim you're
surely you
making,
agree that the appropriate scope, surely you agree that that's the appropriate scope to look within, not
no, because
considering the entire population.
when you're talking about banning something, right? When you're talking about basically setting legal restrictions, you're not talking about a scoped population. You're talking about the entire population, right?
Wait, that's not true. Wait, that's not true at all.
Yeah.
Wait, I don't understand why that would be the case. Like, what? No, wait, hold on. You're gonna have to justify that to me because I think that if there's like an especially vulnerable scoped population, and that scoped population disproportionately represents the consumer base of the product we're talking about, absolutely we would consider that for banning something. And like,
So
hold on,
wait,
to like
you
just to
would
finish this
agree.
point up, just to finish this point up, just to finish this point up. If we're banning it to protect these scoped people, then like our banning doesn't really affect the people who fall out of the scope anyway. So they shouldn't care. We should only be considerate of the people that are affected.
Again, if we draw the parallel to alcohol here, right? There's a small scoped set of people, right, who might be theoretically very inclined to alcohol addiction, right? And the negative effects of that downstream are horrific potentially, right? But the general population does not get addicted to alcohol, right? The general population that consumes alcohol on a time-to-time basis does not get addicted to alcohol, right? So we make it.
Yeah, but this is a false equivalence because
the general
the general population does consume alcohol. The general population
does consume sex work.
No, the general population does not consume personalized sex work, especially not to the extent where it's comparable to alcohol. Literally, almost everybody who's like above the age of like 16 has probably tasted or does drink alcohol. I don't think that these are comparable. There's a much more specific scope.
How many people, right, do you think, by the age of 18, in a country with the internet, have at some point watched porn or gone on some ChatterBait type site?
Okay, porn is not within the scope of what I'm talking about, but the ChatterBait where they've actually paid for a personal interaction, I'd say maybe like 10 to 15, if that. It's a much narrower scope.
Wait, hold on. I'm not talking about the people who paid for it. I'm just talking about the people who have consumed it for a second.
But that's what I'm talking about though. I don't see how that's relevant to what I'm discussing.
This is relevant, right? Because okay, I think I understand what's happening. Okay. This is relevant specifically because, right, you're talking about the addictiveness of the substance effectively in question, right? The substance should be equally addictive whether or not it's free, right?
No. First of all, we're not talking about addiction alone. We're also talking about the exploitation that's entailed by it, because that's what I'm actually banning. I'm not banning addiction. I'm banning exploitation. That's number one. Number two, I don't even know if I agree that they're equally addictive, seeing as how one has a very personalized element, which you're actively paying for, and paying for something consistently,
If I go to
displays way more of an addiction than getting it for free.
If I go to a free ChatterBait site, right, type thing, right, and I consume it every day, whether or not it's free has no effect on the likelihood for me to get addicted to this content.
I disagree.
Personalized.
I disagree.
By consuming this content.
Jack, who do you think is more addicted?
No,
the person who spends money every day on the same thing, or the person who doesn't?
Not asking the question. You're asking a completely different question to what I'm asking. You're asking, if you given two people and knowledge about them, which of them would you be more likely to categorize as addicted? Right? The question I'm asking.
Yeah, I agree.
The question I'm asking is, if you gave someone free heroin every day, and if you gave someone heroin that they paid for every day, are they equally likely to develop an addiction to that thing?
Okay. You're talking about who's equally likely to develop an addiction. I'm talking about who is more likely to already be addicted. If
But
you're
we
asking me
don't.
who's more likely to become addicted, I would still say the person who pays for it, because if they keep paying for it over and over, that demonstrates that they're willing to spend their money, whereas the other person is just doing it. They could just literally be doing it because you're offering it to them.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's likely. I'm saying they definitely still have a high chance of becoming addicted, but I still don't think they're comparable.
I think I one, I think I fundamentally disagree with you, right? I think if someone gives you
Mhm.
an addictive substance, right, it doesn't matter. If you take an addictive substance every day, right, assuming all else equal, except for the fact that you're literally paying for it, right, the likelihood for you to develop an addiction to that substance seems to me to be the same, right?
I
Now,
disagree,
I know
though.
I
I
understand
think
you
that
disagree with that, but that's
uh-huh.
a matter of an opinion that I don't think we can get past, right? Because I think that there's something fundamental there that whether or not we disagree on, I don't think we can get past that. The more important thing here, though, and this is kind of my problem, is you're talking about banning something, right, based on the potential damage it causes to, again, and I understand that you disagree with this, but my claim here is that, like, sex work seemingly is not as addictive as you think it is with regards to a population that is exposed to it. And though I understand, right, that the people who would be addicted might theoretically be more negatively affected as a result of this being a paid service because they'll, I guess, lose money versus jerking off for free for hours on end. Um, is not like reason again to ban it for the entire population. Did I cut out or did you cut out or? Uh-oh. Oh no. Hello?
I can hear you, Jack. I think it was Forks who crashed. I'm sorry. I didn't put my mic on
No,
fast
no,
enough to
I
tell you.
think you who also said he couldn't hear me, so
I can hear you fine.
are
Yeah, I can hear you too.
you trolling Yoo-hoo? You bitch. Oh, you can. What, bro? Don't believe a H at the end of that. That looks like a typo, bro. But regardless, I think it may be a good time to end the debate because I feel like we're actually at an impasse and going in circles anyway. So
I'll let them come back, and then we're just gonna immediately move to closing.
yeah.
Why is Fork's computer so ass? Is he
Dude,
stupid?
actually though. You know what? Maybe I should just throw an ad hom into the closing statement. Just be like, Forks' computer sucks ass, so clearly his argument sucks ass. Is he back? Oh, let's go. Lord.
All right, we're going to move on to closing due to time constraints. So I believe Forks went first. So Jack, you can do your closing.
Yeah, if it happens again, you guys can just skip mine. I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm sure you can just come back and do it afterwards. um, okay, 3, 2, 1. Yep. So, like I said, I think the larger issue that Forks has not fundamentally addressed here, at least in my opinion, is sort of this like the problem he's trying to seemingly solve here, namely, I guess the exploitation of certain vulnerable individuals, mostly men. I just don't necessarily see how banning the specific type of sex work that Forks is talking about achieves that. Seems to be largely unwilling to, I guess, accept the premise I put forward that like a substance, whether or not it's like free, should be equally addictive. Whether or not like it's reflective of how likely someone to be is addicted post hoc as a categorization being a different thing. I think this is relatively obvious, and why like the common sales tactic, whether you're talking about consumer goods or drugs, is like the first one is free. Because it doesn't matter whether or not they paid for it, it's likely they're going to get addicted to it. In terms of, like I said, I do agree that there is theoretically this more modern problem of like a large enough group of like lonely men where this could potentially be problematic, but I don't think there's enough data or time, I guess, behind it to support that idea. It seems to be the case that this is kind of just a post-COVID situation. Like in general, sex rates are on the rise, like for like men in general, and that seems to be in lieu or despite the fact that porn consumption is also on the rise amongst men, paid or free. So I'm not again quite sure how exactly. I guess the ban in question would resolve the problem specifically that Forks is talking about. Like I said, in general, or sorry, secondly, there's a whole group of people that to some degree just use sex work for fun, and to some degree rely on sex work as their only access to sex, that Forks just, I guess, is willing to sort of leave behind, and say, sort of be like, deal with it, fuck off, there's like no room for you situation, if I were to be uncharitable. But yeah, I just don't think that that was necessarily properly addressed, and I don't think that the reasons put forward necessarily sort of make sense for a strict societal ban on the sorts of sex work we're talking about, especially when we're talking or when we're comparing them to potentially addictive substances like um, heroin or alcohol or whatever.
Well, it seems like
It's like a
Forks was
persistent.
shot in the back of the head during Jack's opening statement, and I guess we'll just end it here.